Today, our guests are Hollywood director Peter Segal and famed Mustang restorer Marc Anghel. So together, these two have brought the hero Tommy Boy car back to life and put it to its on-screen livery, complete with Kragers and Callahan auto-labeled heater hoses, everything. Today, we're going to learn the story of saving this car and maybe what happened to the other cars used in the movie, and then determine how we ended up doing an OEM Concours Mopar restoration by a top-flight Mustang guy. I cannot wait to find that out. Peter and Marcus, welcome to the show.
Hi there.
Hello.
Hello, Pete. Marcus,
Hi.
thank you for joining. Okay, so fellas, doing a two-person interview is genuinely hard, but I'm assuming that Pete has done this a few 10,000 times, so it shouldn't be that hard. Marcus, have you done a lot of interviews before?
I've done a couple, so I think it'll flow nicely.
I think so too. We'll start with Pete. Pete, who are you and where are you from?
Um, I'm Pete Segal. I'm a film director, originally from New York, and did a couple years in Phoenix, and where my mom and big sister live, and the rest of the time here in LA.
Marcus, who are you? Where are you from?
I grew up in on the East Coast in Pennsylvania, and I have a auto restoration shop here in Scottsdale, Arizona. And through a number of years and series of events, I became heavily involved in the early first generation Mustang. So that's become my specialty.
Cool. Okay, so we're gonna unpack all this. Uh, go ahead. So you guys are both aware. Uh, our listeners love cars and pop culture, and we have watched the movie Tommy Boy and dissected it frame by frame for years. We've all said the stuff over and over again. It makes us laugh every single time. I dug through my stuff. I do have a Holy Shnikes edition,
There
still
you
in the
go.
saran wrap, so thought you might dig it. Uh, Pete, did you want to be a director as a kid? I mean, how does one get into Hollywood comedy directing?
Purely by accident. I really had no idea what I was going to do. I majored in broadcast journalism and English, double in college at USC. And when I was a walk on to the football team and lasted about 6 weeks as a punter. And then when I got cut, it was time to wake up and think about a career. And so I got a job at local CBS and started there as a production assistant and kind of started working my way up from there.
So, were you going to be a football player? Was that your dream? Was to play pro
It
football?
was, for a brief moment, yes, or basketball. I was an athlete, in my early days, and then life changed, and it was, like I said, time to start growing up.
Did you do high school drama? Stuff like that?
No, didn't act at all. I started doing segments for sort of the local news affiliate in LA, and that led to comedy segments for a show about things to do on the weekends, places to go to eat, things to do and see. And they said we could be funny. And so I just started doing, my first thing was the best pool halls in LA, and I did a takeoff of Scorsese's The Color of Money. And I had my wife play a prostitute, which was a common theme. She was my girlfriend at the time, but so that's kind of a joke. I don't know why, but in local TV, we had, positions open for whores. So who better to go to than your own girlfriend? Hey,
What was your first job out of college then? At CBS?
working actually for the 1984 Olympics, I was a production assistant doing research, and then I worked for the John Robinson show, and seated a lot of LA Rams in our studio, and then did early music videos and children's specials.
What was your first foray into real Hollywood comedy, whether that's TV or
Um,
movies or what?
well, it was I got a chance to do an HBO comedy special. At the time, Roseanne was, the Lucille Ball of television, and her husband was Tom Arnold, and Tom knew these guys, Jim Carrey, Ben Stiller, and a guy named Chris Farley. As a matter of fact, Chris became his best man in one of Tom's weddings. Which one? I don't know. And that led to one appearance with Chris where we were doing a show about relationships. And so his segment was how to pick up a girl at the Glendale Galleria. And we just followed him around with a camera. And it was some of the funniest stuff I've ever been a part of in my life. That led to an appearance of a Chris on the Jackie Thomas Show, which was a spinoff of Roseanne. And then I said, this literally is the funniest man I've ever met. I want to do, if I am so fortunate enough to be able to do a feature film one day, I would love to be, the guy that brings him into the limelight as a star, not just as a second banana or third banana, because he'd been in a couple of movies, Coneheads and things like that by then. And then about a year after the Jackie Thomas Show, I got this script on my desk called Billy the Third, a Midwestern. That was the original name of Tommy Boy. And we had to change the name because at the time they were making Billy Madison, and we didn't want two Billy Billies from SNL people. So
Right. Okay, Marcus, over to you. So I've read your website, and frankly, you have a career path that a lot of our listeners can relate to and probably envy. So, were you at one point working as a technician and then decided to restore cars, or did you dabble in restoring cars the whole time, your whole life?
No, no. So after high school, I went to a technical school in Pennsylvania there for 2 years, and I graduated with an associate's degree in automotive technology. And that at that age, 2021, it was really hard work. You're entry level, you're getting the worst jobs. It's cold, there's snow coming in off the cars in the winter, dripping down your back. Um, it was a difficult career path, and I had everything set up for college, but at the last minute, I decided, after all these years, I just want to work and get going. So that's what I did. I went into automotive, and then after a couple years, I couldn't take it anymore, and I went back to college. I finished a degree, and I wanted to travel, so I went back into the white collar world, and I did that, and I kind of kept the automotive thing quiet in the background.
Hmm.
I didn't tell people, and then one day my boss came in, and he had a car, the engine, died on it, and I kind of sheepishly said, I could probably do that if you needed me to. And it started. People were like at work, okay, can you work on mine, this and that, and it slowly came back. Then I started fixing up cars, but I never. In the beginning, I went from one brand to another. So I'd buy a Buick Grand National or a Cadillac Eldorado, fix it up, and then start over with something else. Did that for years until I finally landed with the Mustang thing and kept that permanently.
And you're noted. I mean, you do Concours, Mustang, restaurant Shelby's too. I think,
Yeah.
and you're located in a pretty prime spot there. I assume that you've had cars in and out of Barrett Jackson over the years. Uh, why Mustangs though? Do you just dig them, or is that just where you got a good name?
No, I got frustrated with constantly changing the car. See, every time you go into a new brand, I think some people can relate to this. So if you got to learn people, you got to learn, there's a guy out here and he has these parts, or there's a wrecking yard that you have to contact, or there's a reseller you have to get friendly with. And then you give all that up when you go into another brand. So I simply did it based on a business decision. I went into a Barnes and Nobles one afternoon and I decided I'm going to sit in here until I figure it out. And it was really just either Mustangs or Camaros. That's what we grew up with. They're, to me, the classic, they're timeless. A 69 Camaro and a 69 Mustang, they always look good. They always will. And I decided to go into the Mustangs. I had one earlier anyway, and that's what I did. I specialized and started it from there. And the idea is if you're good at something, try to be as good as you can. People will come and whatever it is, carpentry, mechanics, anything. And that's kind of been my motto, is just try to put out the best possible product, hands down. And yeah, so I'm pretty happy with the path. I didn't plan it that way, but that's how it kind of worked out.
Okay, well, you got a famous movie car out of it too, so that's good. All right,
Yeah.
all right, Pete. Question I'd love to know: who selected the GTX as the Tommy Boy hero car, and why?
So when we were writing the movie, Fred Wolf was one of the head writers of Saturday Night Live at the time, and I knew that we were kind of throwing this original script out. There were a lot of good parts in it, but I just wanted to take it a different direction and wanted to be a story about these two guys who didn't get along at Callahan Auto, who had to work together to try to save the company. So I knew there was going to be a road trip. And I asked Fred, I said, you choose the car. I love cars, but I'm not a total car guy. I knew Fred was a muscle car guy, and he chose a Belvedere GTX. But we couldn't afford, you need multiple cars on a movie, usually two for stunts. And in our case, we needed to dedicate one to the destruction of the car by the deer, and another we had to designate as the car that was going to go on the turntable, which spun it around on the trailer of an 18-wheeler. We built a big mechanical turntable, and so we had to take off the axles to bring the level of the car down, and we had to put mechanics to make the hood go up and down based on a guy who ended up sitting in the trunk, touching two wires together to activate the hood to go up and down. That was that's own thing. And then two that were actually mobile in the film. And we had, because of the need for four, we couldn't afford Belvederes, so we got satellites, which is the same body, and then we dolled them up to look like GTXs.
Mm-hmm.
And the two that were, one for the deer and one for the turntable, those were hard tops, and we sawed off the tops. I still have a scar on my hand from trying to, do my Starsky and Hutch impression and dive into the car and slice my hand open. And then there's the pristine car in the first act, and then the car that Marcus has restored, that I own today, which is everything else in the movie, which is, all of the baby gate stuff, the hood flying off at prehistoric forest. Everything else was this car.
That was the baby gate car?
Yes. It doesn't look like it now. As a matter of fact, the car is on its way to the O'Reilly Auto Parts National Convention in Houston. And every time a truck carrier picks it up, it says, is this the shitty looking car from the beginning? From the middle of the movie? I said, no, this is the shitty looking car, but it looks now like the car at the beginning of the
good
movie.
one.
I mean, I don't think there's a finer example of a GTX on the road.
Do you know where the other cars are? Are they still living?
The newer one that was in the first act now does not look that way anymore. As a matter of fact, last I saw it was yellow. It was at a museum in Idaho. Someone found it online, and when I found this car through our editor on the movie, excuse me, Bill Kerr, it was a barn find, and it was at the Barrett Jackson auction in Jacksonville, Florida. And I called David Spade, and I said, Dave, we found the car. You should bid on it. It feels right that it should be yours. So he bid on it long distance, and he bought it. And then about 2 years after that, I was filming something in Atlanta, and Spade called me, and he was pissed at himself. He said, God damn it. Barrett Jackson asked to sell one of my other cars. He had a Chevelle SS, and he said, do you want to just flip the Tommy Boy car? Have you restored it? Have you begun restoring it or anything yet? And he said, no, I don't think I have the patience to restore it. So go ahead, flip it. Anyway, he called me and said, dude, I should have just sold it straight to you. So I had to bid on it at the Barrett Jackson Scottsdale.
A 1967 Plymouth Satellite convertible. This is one that was in Tommy Boy.
Here it is, the 67 Plymouth Satellite convertible.
Wow, what a beautiful piece this is. It just looks horrible, as it should from the movie Tommy Boy.
and I bid on it, and everyone thought I was insane, and I got it, and took it to my big sister. Drove it limping home, leaking gasoline all over the road, and parked it at my mom's house. She lives only like a mile or two from Marcus. But that's not how I found him. It was through a friend in La Cañada, where I live, who tracked down his father's Mustang from when, his dad was a young man, and his wife got pissed that he spent this money on this car that, they needed a station wagon. And anyway, so he found that car through a series of events and took it to Marcus, because Marcus's reputation for Mustangs. And I asked Dave, my friend, I said, I'm now looking for someone to restore this thing. Do you have any idea where I can take it? And I initially even thought about taking it to the shows on TV, the counting cars and places that do the renovations, because I thought, I don't know, maybe they can benefit out of this as much as I can. No one responded, I didn't get any callbacks or anything. And then I think Dave pitched the story to Marcus, and I'll let you take it from there.
So, Marcus, that was the next question to you. Why did you say yes? Because you just said, I have picked a make that I can stay in my lane in. I know all the vendors.
I know he'll never restore a car like this ever again. That I know.
Well, okay, but working backwards, I'll just say, for anybody listening, I am definitely only doing Mustangs. Like that is it. Like, I don't care, who's calling or whatever. It has to be a Mustang. But the background to that is, if I go back, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years before me and Pete got together, is I had a 67 Plymouth. So, basically a GTX. So when Dave contacted me, my initial thing was like, I'm not interested. And then he explained what it was. I'm like, well, it's funny because I restored one of those cars, and it wasn't a GTX, and I made it look like a GTX. And this is the same kind of concept. This car wasn't really, but we made it look like that. So I thought, and I pick and choose the cars that I work on based on the stories. I always like an interesting story, because I only have so many hours, so many days, so many years. I want these cars all to be interesting. I don't build cars to just flip or anything like that. So the story was exceptional. And with that, I think everything came together. I still had contacts out there in that world. And it was great. So it's a strange way for it to come together, but that was the last Mustang car for sure. Definitely.
The last non-Mustang car.
It was a little painful.
So, walk me through the actual car. So, Pete, you said it ran and drove. Was it an original drivetrain car? Did you decode the body tag or anything like that? Like, do you know a lot about it, or was the goal is it going to be the Tommy Boy car again? Was that always your goal, Pete? Was make it nice?
That's actually a very good question. The question was, since it was not a GTX to begin with, I was making it something that it already was not. But the question then would be to Marcus, and I went back and forth, do I restore it as a concours quality GTX, or do I restore it to a pristine version of the Tommy Boy car? Mm-hmm. And because I did a lot of modifications to the car for the movie, and I decided to go the route of there's only one Tommy Boy car. And I don't think, even though that other one exists somewhere at some other museum, they're not going to go through what Marcus and I went through on this. I dare them to go through that. But the reason how I knew it was our car, and the reason why I wanted to restore it the same way is, normally in a GTX, you'd have, 2 bucket seats and a center console. And I asked the transportation department when we got the car in the beginning, I said, I knew there was going to be this deer scene where the deer is going to be in the back seat destroying the.
It's alive! I think you tried to bite me! Oh, man!
car, and I wanted as much surface space of the backs of the seats. So I wanted to put in a bench, because that gap in between the two, I said, that's wasted space comedically. So I want a bench seat. I want a column shift, because the antlers could reach that easier. I wanted a soft top, because obviously we're going to destroy that. And because we were making a GTX out of a satellite, in the script, it said, David Spade's character says, yeah, and I put in a 440 Magnum with a 6-pack.
Yeah.
Well, so we were going to put in a 440 Magnum. Marcus advised me properly, but also we screwed up. When the hood flew up, there was no 6-pack. You could see it had a Super Commando air filter on it, where normally the 6-pack, you would see it exposed. So that was already a faux pas on our part. But I said, no, let's go 440 Magnum, bench seat, column shift, and good luck with everything else,
Okay. So for what it's worth, people like me and everybody that listens to our show, we wanted the Tommy Boy car anyway.
Good.
So making a concours, faux GT, no, that's not.
Yeah.
Anybody could do that.
Yeah.
And what's cool is it is really the Tommy Boy car. And I mean, there might be little different. So our one of our listeners, Steve Beegler, probably introduced himself to you at MCACN, and like a lot of people, and he sent us a bunch of photos. So one of the things that really caught my eye, I mean, Marcus must be a hell of a good restorer, because it really is as if a Concours correct Tommy Boy car existed. Like it says Callahan on the heater hoses. It actually has a Mopar painted engine compartment, which I think in the scene where the hood flips up, it's all blacked out like most movie cars are. Where did you decide to stop taking liberties and just, all right, this is what it's going to be? It's going to be a Mopar Concours correct Tommy Boy car versus just making it totally screen correct.
Well, and Marcus, you can jump in on this too, except for the visual things like the bench seat and the column shift and all the, accoutrements that make it, GTX, which is logos and things like that. I said, let's make this really slick as much as possible. So you suggested putting in like fuel injection and disc brakes. Those were upgrades from what was there. We definitely agreed on the 440 Magnum without a 6-pack. And you put in a Bluetooth, which is nice. I'm reminded every now and then when I turn on the radio, Bluetooth activated. Like, that's not how a 1967 car spoke. They didn't speak, but now it does. And at MCACN, it was fantastic because it's the first show I've ever taken it to. It won a couple of awards for street mod. But the thing I was most proud of is the two judges. Actually, the first judge came by and graded it and said, well, I couldn't find anything wrong with the car. It is so clean. I said, okay, great. I didn't really know what that meant. He walks away, and a few minutes later, there's two judges now that are back. And this guy was apparently the judge's boss. And I said, is there a problem? Something going on here? I thought we already finished the judging. And the boss said, yeah, I've never heard of a perfect score before, so I wanted to see for myself if this was a perfect score or not. Apparently, the first judge gave it a perfect score. So he went through the whole thing, goes, yeah. And he was kind of like grumbly a little bit. And he says, yeah, it's a perfect score. And I said, well, did you see the poster of the before and after where it came from? And he didn't understand what he was looking at. And he said, wait a minute. He looked at the poster, he said, this is the car from that movie? And I said, yeah. You see how it started? And there are all these pictures of the barn find. It was just rusted out. It was terrible. And he had then he took selfies with me.
Perfect. Okay.
I don't think this judge did that a lot.
But Marcus, how bad was it? So I've looked, your website's pretty slick, and you have all these good photos of how you received the car, and it's got the like little tow bar attachments, I assume, for being pulled as a movie car or something. But we've seen rusty cars before, and really rusty cars, and I'll admit, it just looks like a really rough car. But how bad was it when you got it apart?
I'll say it's the worst that I've ever seen. I mean, if it didn't have the background that it did, it wouldn't make sense to restore the car. And And just, I got to give credit to Pete's sister. If she's the one that drove it from the auction, I mean, that thing was not drivable. Like your foot could go through the floor, the gas tank, they had that wasn't working correctly. I mean, it was just, yeah, it was really rough. So what's the hardest part with this car is you have a make and a year that's not, there's not a lot of parts available for that. You know, most of the Mopar guys are into the late 60s stuff, 68, 69, 70. That's where the money is. So you have a 67, you got to find parts for it, but then on top of it, it's a convertible. So like the
Was
convertible frame was,
was this a real convertible car
oh
from
yeah,
you?
yeah, it was a real convertible car, always, and it started its life as a small block car. So whatever that was a small block in there. We don't have the data tag because you asked about that previously. That was gone, but we could see some of the things that were original to it. It was a dark green car originally, and it's yeah, I mean, the finding the parts for that was ridiculous. Like some of them are so difficult, and that's what we really focused on there. I wanted every single little detail. Like when you build a car, my philosophy on it is do it as if every single part on that car is going to be judged. The radio knobs, knobs for the convertible top, little things like that. They're like impossible to find anymore. It all comes together. Like when you look at that interior, it's spectacular. The bench seat. So the bench seat that was in there was so rusted, the frame, we couldn't use it. So we had to find a bench seat, but we didn't know what it was. That it's like, well, what did they put in here? We don't know what fits in here. So we had to go through that process, found a seat in Ohio, convinced somebody, it's like, hey, can you box up that bench seat and send it to me? Like, I need that. And yeah, it showed, it looked like two coffins showed up, because they split up the seat. But yeah, it goes on and on like that. And to me, what I always wanted to see was the only thing that made sense is when you see this car, it reminds you of the movie. That's it. And especially that opening scene where they're driving through town and up to the Callahan, up to the factory there. That's the car. And that's what we wanted. We wanted the stance of it to be the same, the dual exhaust coming out of it. Even the sound, we played around with the sound, how can we get the right tone for it? I know Pete asked me a lot about the sound. It's like, well, because we're trying to figure out what's too loud, what's too quiet. You know, you don't want to be driving through your neighborhood and everybody is like, well, I guess Pete's home. We could hear him coming in with the car again. So yeah, it's a tremendous effort. And I just didn't realize that how much of an effort it was going to be from the beginning. So when you take a really rough car, people can relate to that. It's a tremendous thing.
So our listeners are into Hollywood fabricated cars, so Hollywood modified cars. So did it have mods that the who built the car, Pete? Did it come? I mean, for the movie originally, did it come blue painted, or did somebody have to prep it with the seat you wanted? Was it a studio car?
No, we did it. No, it's we like I said, we had 4 cars, and we painted them all the same color. And actually, I still have the skateboard that Marcus used as a template for getting the color right, because this is not a Plymouth blue. As a matter of fact, everybody asks me, because when you get it in the lights at MCACN, for example, it's just such a spectacular color, and I call it Tommy Boy Blue because that's what it is. It was an accident from the transpo department. They weren't trying to be artists. They just said blue, and they just came up with a blue. And but other than that, except for putting a Super Commando air filter on it to camouflage the small block, what you see is what you get. As a matter of fact, a lot of people kept saying there were these 2 extenders under the front bumper that everyone said, oh, that was for towing, for the movie towing. I said, no. And here's another reason why I know it's our car from the movie. When the car has the hood sheared off from the from the road sign in front of the prehistoric forest.
Yeah.
To shear off a hood like that can be very dangerous. You can decapitate your stunt drivers. So what you have to do is you have to have pick points. and you have a cable that was attached to, that's what those two rods extended in front of the front bumper were. A cable attached to that to some pulleys that went up to a pick point on a crane and back down to the other side. So that hood, when it flew off, we knew exactly where it was going to land, and it wasn't going to hurt anybody. It wasn't, you don't just,
it's a terrifying
hood,
stunt.
it
looks like someone, because
yes.
it goes right over the front seat and
yes,
lands in the
and
back.
right over the heads of the actors. So, it was a safety precaution, and that's what those two things were. And they kept it on. The car ended up working in other productions. I know the most famous thing it was in is Katy Perry's music video Teenage Dreams. It had been like spray painted silver at that point. But they kept the front little attachments on. And
was it in David Spade's movie Joe Dirt? Was it the
No.
orange car in that, or was that the other one? Or
that's
was it
that's a different one? Yep. So no, this was the only movie that I know of it that it was in was Tommy Boy. But it sat out in a production parking lot for a quarter century. And that's why, as Marcus said, it was like a Fred Flintstone mobile. You could literally, your feet could, touch the ground, because there wasn't much of a floorboard.
Who owned it? Was it like a picture car warehouse car?
It was a picture car company, I guess. Why they decided to turn it over, I actually found, somebody sent me online a couple that purchased it before it went to Barrett Jackson, and they were thrilled that they had surmised that it was the Tommy Boy car from some billing and paperwork, and then they decided to put it up for auction. Where it was before that, definitely it was in some field somewhere. It did not see a garage for a couple of decades.
Marcus, did it take floors and quarters and trunk? Like, what all did you have to cut out and replace with new metal?
Well, there's a significant amount of metal that we had to replace. Some of it we had to hand fabricate because you can't get the pieces and parts. So to answer that, let's see, there was sections of floors we had to replace. We had to get new doors because they were pretty damaged, fenders. The hood and the quarters had to be reworked, and the tail panel. So, I mean, the goal was, I know a lot of people want to keep the original sheet metal, but that just wasn't really an option on here. We had to replace large sections just to, like the quarters were just rotted. Like there's nothing you could do with that. And they don't make convertible reproduction convertible quarter panels. So we had to take hardtop ones and modify them to make them fit. So there's a lot of work in that body. And again, like Pete said, that color is phenomenal. I actually sent Pete, he was you were in South Africa, I think, filming. And I sent a color sample, I think, that we didn't like in the beginning, right?
It was a little piece of plastic.
Yeah, and is that where I sent the first one, and then you were like, no way.
That was pretty close. And then the skateboard you sent, which I've got it right here. You sent me this regular skateboard on one side, Tommy Boy Blue on the other.
That's awesome.
Yes. Yeah.
Did you paint that, Marcus?
Yeah, you're supposed to use that. But anyway, the color, it's a custom color. And I don't think a normal Mopar color, there's one that's close that it just wouldn't pop like this. When you see that car in the sun, it is spectacular. Like Pete, that. Like when you look at this thing in the sun, it's like with the chrome.
Here's my extra touch-up paint that you gave me is right on my desk.
GTX paint.
But it's, Rob, the way it's set off with the chrome, it has so much chrome and stainless, this car, on the interior and exterior, and finding those pieces, we could have a whole podcast on that, but it's the chrome and that metallic color. It's just, oh man, it looks so good. It's, yeah. So
well, I wished I could have seen it in person. I wasn't able to go to MCACN or the 30th anniversary event in Sandusky, but was the goal to save this car, Pete, for 30th anniversary stuff, or was this just a car you should have bought long ago and didn't? Like what?
Ugh.
Why did you do this?
Why you're making me feel the pain once again. So when we finished filming, the transport department offered me the car for pennies, and I thought the movie was going to bomb. So I said, no, 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 please, you keep it. And of course, the movie didn't bomb, and that was the most expensive mistake I had made in my life, not buying it back then.
Mm-hmm.
So I looked for it. I looked for the car, called the transport department over the years. As a matter of fact, then I got to make a movie. First time I was back in Toronto was in 2024. Well, actually, it was 2020 when we started filming My Spy, the first My Spy with Dave Bautista. And ironically, 12 people on our crew had worked on Tommy Boy 20 some years earlier. And because it's kind of a small town, Toronto, the production world is not massive. And I said, by any chance, do you have any idea where that car went? Or any one of the cars, mostly the two convertibles, because the hard tops were trashed. And they said, no, we have no idea. And it was about a year or two after that we found it in Florida.
Okay, so you don't think the other two modified? We thought the car that the deer stood on wasn't even a satellite. We thought it was maybe a Fury or something else.
No,
it looks like it has different quarters.
It was a satellite. And what we had to do there, the deer wrangler told us, and he was the same animal wrangler that worked on My Spy. We only had a dog in that movie. I showed him all these storyboards of the destruction that I wanted to do. And it was kind of like what I've read about, Lucas looking at Spielberg's storyboards for Jaws and said, because apparently the mechanical shark in that movie barely worked. And Lucas said to him, if you could film 50% of these storyboards, it's going to be a miracle. Well, our storyboards, only the final frame, the final cell, the deer wrangler said, that we can do. And it was a shot of the deer standing on top of the car and jumping off. Everything else, we had to wing it and make it up. So for that one shot, he said, here's what I'm going to need. I'm going to need you to give me a car for a month. That's why we said, okay, well, production is only going to be two months. This wasn't a big movie. So that was why that car was just solely for him. He put it in a field and he hid the cameras and the lights. We hid the cameras and the lights in bushes. He put a ramp on the backside of the car so that the deer at night in the corral could walk up the ramp, and he put food inside the car. It could eat and then pee and poop in the car so it would smell itself. And then one day when it got comfortable and it actually stood there long enough, the lights would turn on. The cameras would operate and the deer would be freaked out by the lights and jump off and run away. That is exactly what you see in the movie. One take, it took 1 month and an entire car. So that was that.
That's terrible. That's awesome, but it's great. Marcus, how long did it take you to restore this car? Because in this world, I mean, there's no such thing as an estimate or a project schedule. Usually, it's usually figure as you go type of work.
Well, I mean, in some respects, it is. People want to know. I mean, everybody wants to know, and I try to do everything. I think initially I might have said 12 months, something like that. And was it 3 years, Pete?
3 years.
3 years. Almost
I
to the
did my best.
day.
I tested Marcus's patience because I would ask. So no pressure, but anytime this year. And of course, what was great about his blog is that had I not had that blog, I would have felt so in the dark, and I would have felt, gosh, I don't know. It's sort of like, when a plumber tells you need copper pipes. I don't know. Do I? But the fact that he was so meticulous in even down to, I remember one headlight bezel got from, and just telling me just the amount of effort it took, I realized it wasn't just the physical craftsmanship. It was, I would say, you can tell me, Marcus, at least half of it, if not more, was the research, calling around, making deals with people, to find these little tiny parts, or to lead you to a place where you could get a part or create a part. That's what was, amazing to look at this blog, and it calmed me. And I actually started to look forward to another entry, because I could see even down to a nut or a bolt. Hey, we found it, and I would show it to my whole family. Look, my wife would say, yeah, any closer? I'm like, I don't know, but he found the bolt. Isn't that cool? And it was definitely a scavenger hunt.
Yeah.
Was there a goal between the two of you to have the car making its rounds for the 30th anniversary of the movie? I don't know if it was or not, but it's great.
It was kismet. I learned after, several months that it was going to take as long as it was going to take. And as painful as that was for both of us, I just learned to be patient. So I was not thinking about any, celebrations. The city of Sandusky actually reached out to me for the 2025, which would have been the 25th anniversary of the movie, but then COVID happened. Mm-hmm. The 25th anniversary, which was going to be in 2020, sorry. And but we missed it. And then I was not thinking about anything. As a matter of fact, I don't think we'd even begun the restoration in 20. And it was probably like 21 or 22 that it started. And then suddenly they started calling me about, well, what about the 30th anniversary? We're going to do a 3-day celebration in town. And suddenly we were close. I thought, wow, we might actually hit this. Wouldn't that be cool? And we did by, I think, 2 weeks. I think you delivered the car on like the July 4th weekend. Yeah. And then I had to ship it there mid-July.
It's working. I can tell you it's bringing joy to the masses because it did make that event. And I assume that they all lost their minds over it. I mean, I don't know who wouldn't.
And NBC Nightly News came and did a story that they reran on the Today Show. And the reporter, at first we were going to do the interview in front of the car. And then he said, can we do the interview in the car? I'm like, okay, sure.
The car now belongs to director Pete Segal.
Look, I've had more successful movies box office than this, but this is the one that people keep talking about.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's a generational film, and I think there's a sweetness to it. And the fact that it was arguably, Chris Farley's best film, and people absolutely adored him.
It's a lie! And then I bring this, actually Marcus gave it to me, a plastic life-size deer hunting decoy, but it's a deer. And so that travels with me in the trunk everywhere I go. And what's cool about it, especially at MCACN, first people see the car and they go, oh, that's a nice car. And then they see the deer and they go, wait a minute, deer car? No. And it's that growing sense of, holy shit, is this what I think it is? And it's kind of fun to watch people's reactions, because otherwise they might just walk right by it. Because especially at MCACN, there's a billion beautiful cars. When they see that deer, and then this little thing, we put an empty bag of M&Ms, peanut M&Ms on the dash. They put 2 and 2 together, and then people are lining up to take pictures in front of it, which is really cool.
Okay, I have movie questions. So I think before we started rolling, Marcus wanted some movie question details. So who put in the M&M down the defroster joke? Was that you? Was that just in the script?
No, that was in the script. That was Fred Wolf. And I think that was day 2 of production. And it was a very hard shoot because we really didn't have a script, a full script when we started shooting it. I felt like we were always laying out the train track in front of the locomotive. But on day 2, we had that stunt. And I thought, oh gosh, we're going to need like a special effects technician, and we're going to have to put all the little M&Ms on a little monofilament and have them all be pulled one at a time into the air vent. No, we didn't. We just got lucky. We went around a curve and the actual bag was there, and all the M&Ms did their job, and they rolled right into the
That's awesome.
Heater core. And of course, one of the first things, when Marcus got to the heater core, that was the big question, right? Whether or not there were M&Ms inside the heater.
Was that this car or was it the other car?
The other car.
Oh.
Yes. So the fact I didn't expect there to be in this one, because I knew that the other was the pristine one, and that was the one that we used for that particular gag.
Mm-hmm.
But I still get asked that question.
Marcus, did you find movie damage in the car? Not rust, but like damage from filming. Like, for example, is this the car that had the door ripped off going backwards on the gas pump? That's this car.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say the biggest damage, which was surprising, was the car was definitely jumped for some reason at some point in its life. I mean, the oil pan was collapsed on the bottom. The subframe there was really damaged. So I don't know when that happened, but I would say I'm blaming it on movie stuff of some sort. Um, yeah, but that I would say, oh, and those brackets we talked about, Pete was saying for the hood, they just welded those to the frame, and it wasn't very pretty. So we had to clean all that up and cut all that out there. Otherwise, uh, it was connected to the bumper. You couldn't get the bumper off.
Is this the car that had the hood fly open with Chris Farley in it, or was that the car that was on the 18-wheeler thing you mentioned?
No, this was the one with Farley in it. So Farley and Spade drove this. This was like Superstar, the Carpenter song, singing anything with a baby gate was this car. The hood shear off in front of Prehistoric Forest was this car. Hyper extending the door, all the funny stuff happened to this car.
Okay. In the grand scheme of things, if this car is the number one car you could have got from a movie, is there any other movie car from a movie you directed or otherwise that you wanted or would still like?
Well, I thought about buying the Sunbeam Tiger from Get Smart, but that really was a piece of crap. It wound up in the Warner Brothers Museum right next to the Tumbler and the Scooby-Doo car and others. I kind of wanted that one, but I also knew that their reputation was not great and it was going to be trouble. But if I could choose, I would say Bullet, the Steve McQueen car.
The Mustang or the Charger?
The Charger.
The black Charger? I think I lost Pete.
No, actually, the green one. That was Mustang, right?
Yeah, Steve McQueen's green Mustang.
It was fastback. Yeah.
Yeah, the green.
I don't know if that was a Shelby.
Fastback. No, it wasn't. And it one of the two Mustangs is still alive now. And one of them survived and sold at MCACN. Yeah. I think one of the Chargers survived too. But Marcus, would you take on another Pete Segal project?
If he buys a Mustang, I would. Yeah. I don't know. I will say, I mean, the project itself was great. If it didn't have this story behind it, I would have really been kind of painful. But every day you're reminded of what you're working on. Yeah, it took a lot of work, but it was gratifying, to have that experience working on that. So, I say that kind of joking around that, okay, but we went through it, learned a lot, and it's the end result that that we have here, and I'm happy with it. I'm proud of the way it came out.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you both for the time. This is one of these things where the interview's already gone long, and I would love another 3 hours of your time because I eat this stuff up. But you did save the Tommy Boy car, and whether you own it forever or for another year, it doesn't matter. It exists, and it's going to keep bringing people happiness, and it's awesome. So, what I'd like to do is end here. How can people follow you both? So Pete, you're a famous film director. You're probably pretty easy dude to follow, but how can people follow you?
Peter Segal. I'm at on Instagram. I got a blue check. Yep.
Blue check. Marcus, how about you?
I have a website, That's what I usually direct people towards, angelrestorations.com. And although I don't make major Hollywood movies, I do small YouTube videos. I just completed a series this weekend on some of the Mustang detailing. I like to share some of the knowledge I've gotten over the years. I have articles on the website and Instagram. I love Instagram. So yeah, that's not hard to find me either.
We'll have links in the notes for both of you. Thank you again. This was a treat. And if you do another Hollywood car, or don't, you're welcome back here anytime. So thanks, folks, very much.
Thank you.